Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us on Wandering Minds, live from Appleton North High School in Appleton, Wisconsin. Co-producers Andrew Ida and Emma Hammond. Narrated by Mr. Eric Eastman. Wandering Minds to us means exploring our thoughts, exploring the world around us. First, a special thank you today goes out to the chief researchers and writers, Andrew Wilkes and Alex Wormley. Without their work, this podcast would never have been able to happen. Today, we're going to explore the power of cults, what qualities make a cult leader, as well as what sustains them as leaders, and how people become wrapped up in a cult. On November 18th, 1978, in a new town named Jonestown, Guyana, 900 American citizens participated, oftentimes not upon their own free will, but participated in a mass murder-suicide. 900 American citizens in Jonestown, Guyana. A utopian community, supposedly, that was built by the hands of Jim Jones and his followers of the People's Temple. People's Temple started in 1955 in Indiana. He had the idea of combining Christianity, socialism, and civil rights into a utopian community of followers. I don't know what your views are on some of those things, but during this time in the 50s and 60s, there's some dialogue that was going on in our society related to the plight of minorities and others. And Jim Jones wanted to embrace all humankind. It doesn't sound too bad, does it? And our story today is going to discuss how from 1955 to 1978 he went from creating a utopian society to mass executing murder-suicide of 900 of his followers. For those of you that don't know, I want to just discuss first, briefly, what some of the qualities of a cult leader are. Number one, if you want to look at positive qualities, and you must be able to address the positive qualities of a cult leader, they need to be dynamic. They need to be eloquent, great speakers, get people to follow them. Okay, get people to listen to them. Get people to believe. Now, I want you to think about Psych Club. It's scary, right? We got over 125 people here right now listening to me talk. Uh-oh. No, just kidding. But those are some positive qualities of a cult leader. It's what brings people in. You can't have some jerk that is unapproachable, that is spewing things that make people feel creepy. No, that's not what you want. You want somebody that energizes people, that gives them a purpose, that gives them a reason, that excites them. That's wonderful. Those are great attributes of any leader. However, there's a couple other attributes that are not so positive. There are actually two distinct personality disorders that almost every cult leader possesses. That is narcissistic personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder. First, narcissistic personality disorder. Narcissistic personality disorder, an individual is going to have a distorted self-image, going to have unstable emotions, vanity, a sense of prestige and power, grandiose beliefs of their adequacy and abilities, and an exaggerated sense of their importance. Jim Jones fit all those categories. Second personality disorder is antisocial personality disorder. This one's really dangerous. A lot of times people hear the term antisocial and they think that it's somebody that is afraid to socialize, that kind of stays to themselves, that type of thing. That's not what antisocial personality disorder is. Antisocial personality disorder is someone who is against society's rules. They don't follow the rules of society. The only thing that matters is themselves. They lack remorse, which means they're never going to apologize because they're never wrong. And they are impulsive. and they are aggressive. You take somebody with the positive qualities that we talked about before, combine those with these qualities, and you have a cult leader that can be incredibly, incredibly dangerous. And that's what Jim Jones ended up being. He preached goodness in his people. He preached righteousness. He preached purity. He preached goodness, welcoming society, and he combined those with some not so good traits. What leads Jim Jones into continuing? Because there are plenty of people that are narcissistic. There are people that are antisocial. There are people that are great leaders that don't end up being cult leaders. What happens? Well, he's constantly reinforced. People praise him. People clap for him. More and more people show up. I mean, at the height of People's Temple, you're talking about 20,000 members. He's doing something right. It might be evil, but he's doing something that's bringing people in. But he's constantly being reinforced for these attributes. Think about Hollywood stars that do outrageous things. Any publicity is good publicity. And they're being reinforced for these narcissistic tendencies. Jim Jones was being reinforced for these narcissistic tendencies. It happens over and over again. Look at me, look at me. Yay, 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 yay. Good job, good job. We love you, we love you, we love you. And he's constantly being reinforced for these attributes. But the big question is, how does he sucker? How does he fool all of these people to buy into what he's selling throughout the course of these, in this case, 23 years? Well, there's two psychological terms. One of them is called foot in the door phenomenon. Has anybody ever heard of foot in the door phenomenon? Okay. Foot in the door phenomenon is this. You start with a really simple, nice request. Okay? You want to become a part of our church? You want, and when I say church, I do want to clarify. Cults, they may say it's about religion. It's not about religion. It's about power. Okay? It's about the leader having power over everybody else. Okay? It's not about religion. All right? This is not me saying anything bad about religion. That's not what this is about. Because a cult is not about religion. They might say it is, but it's not. Okay? It is about power, power, power. So how does he keep people coming in? Foot in the door phenomenon. He starts with tiny requests. Come and see us on Sundays. Cool. Okay. I'll check it out. They go to this service, and there's clapping, there's singing, there's happiness, there's smiles. Everybody's pumped to be there. Does that sound like fun? Sounds like a good time. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not a big dancer. But I love to sing. But yeah, let's have a party. That sounds good. Okay, foot in the door, we get you there. All right, okay, cool. We have another service on Wednesday, so come Wednesday and Sunday. Hey, you know what? I had so much fun Sunday. Let's do Wednesday. All right, well, we need to keep this group, the People's Temple, going. How about tithing 10%? Tithing, giving 10% of your salary. Well, yeah, that's the least I can do, right? All right, well, we need a new building, so let's go ahead and give 30%. Okay? Okay, let's give 50%, and you're going to work for us 15 hours a week. Let's give everything. Let's give up your house. Let's give up your job. Let's work for the People's Temple for 80 hours a week. Listen, these people that become members of cults, they don't grow up saying, you know what would be awesome? I would love to get involved with a cult. That would be fantastic. You know what? I would love to work my tail off. And I would love to make a ton of money. And then I'd like to give it all to somebody who's going to screw me over. That sounds awesome. And then I want to work for them for free for the rest of my life. Yay! It's kind of like saying, you know what? I want to grow up to be a heroin addict. Nobody says that. Nobody says that. Right? I hope not. Gosh, it would be great. Let's go ahead and have the trifecta. I want to be a heroin addict. I want to be in a cult. And I want to be in prison. That sounds like fun. No, they don't grow up wanting to be in a cult. They go into it saying, I want to be a part of something special. These are intelligent people. These are spiritual people. I don't want you to be fooled. These are not people that are suckers. These are not people that are like easily brainwashed. These cult leaders are incredibly good at what they do. And they start out with these tiny requests, and they'll build them up and up and up and up. And then when they have them, they do something called door in the face. Door in the face, they request something gigantic. Let me sleep with your wife. No way. You know what? I'll give to the People's Temple. I'll do these things, but there's no way you're sleeping with my wife. Okay, well, how about your cousin? So they throw this gigantic request, and you say, no way. But now they've anchored it into this extreme that all of a sudden something that used to be really extreme doesn't seem that extreme anymore. So the two psychological techniques that they use, foot in the door, small requests leading to larger requests, and door in the face. Huge request, then, okay, it gets denied, then they're going to ask for something a little slightly smaller. Doesn't seem quite as rash. Doesn't seem quite as irrational. Door in the face. What keeps him there? Jim Jones, this was his specialty. So he started out in Indiana. They got forced out of Indiana because, supposedly, of his views on civil rights and his welcoming of African Americans, etc., into his church. So he wanted to go to some place that was more welcoming. So they went out to California. And while he's out in California, things kind of fell apart. He didn't believe that the American society was ready for his type of revolution. He got in a whole lot of trouble. Tax evasion, etc., possibly other things. And so they ended up ultimately moving to Jonestown, Guyana. During this entire process, he's taking these individuals. They first just start going to services. They ultimately give up everything. They move out to California, and then they move to Guyana with him. How does he control them? Well, the first thing is he gets them to be dependent on them. Once they give everything up, what do they have? They have nothing. So what do they have to do? They have to rely on Jim Jones. Dependency. Second thing, idealism. Why are they there? They want to be a part of a perfect community, a utopian community. So if you want to be a part of a utopian community, you're going to have to do some sacrificing. Third, now we're getting into some psychological warfare. Self-incrimination. He has them confess to him. Confess their deepest, darkest sins. Guess what? He holds on to that. He holds on to that and says, walk away now. Let's see what others will say about you, knowing this information I have on you. A controlled environment. Starts out in Indiana, goes out to the country in California, ends up in an isolated, in the rainforest in Guyana. Completely isolated from everything. There's no internet. There's no email. There's no phone. Okay? He talks them into cutting off all connections with family members and friends. All they believe is what he tells them. And believe me, he told them some crazy stuff. Okay, some crazy stuff. You think there's fake news now? You should have heard some of the fake news that he was spewing to his followers. Off the charts. Constant presence. It wasn't just about him constantly watching over his people. He would get family members to turn on other family members who were doing or saying things against his People's Temple. So it could be your son or daughter, your husband or wife, your cousin, your best friend. But if you said something as trivial as, gosh, I would really love to just go back to California for a couple weeks and be with my dying grandmother. No, that is terrible. Why would you ever want to leave this place? Constant presence. And finally, perceptual distortion. You start living a certain way, you don't realize how messed up you're living. You don't realize how warped it's become because it's become your reality. So Jim Jones starts off with this utopian community in Indiana. They move out to California. They end up in Jonestown, Guyana, in a beautiful, beautiful area with all of these jungles and all that sort of stuff. He's got 1,000 members living there. Politicians and journalists come down to Guyana to visit because people are so desperate to find out if their relatives are okay. Jim Jones sends his squad, his security force, to chase them down, murdered several of them. They come back. Jim Jones says, we're never going to be able to live in this utopian world again. It's time for us to go to a better place. Men, women, children, babies were either forced to drink Kool-Aid laced with cyanide, or they willingly took this juice laced with cyanide, or people that were trying to run away were gunned down. A handful of people escaped. About 600 people were not on site at that time and avoided this. And those are the individuals that have been able to come back and share some of the information that they experienced in Jonestown. That is how cults develop, how they progress, and how they ultimately fail and deteriorate. So I'll stop there. We have about 5 minutes. Any questions that you might have?
So this is going to be a little long-winded, but why? I guess the general idea is, why don't the police intervene as it becomes? Obviously, this was big enough. It gathered about 900 people for the following, so it wasn't like obscure and not heard of. And then, I mean, if it progresses to the point of a 900-person murder-suicide, why don't they do something?
Number one, the amount of control that he had over his followers, nobody would talk. Number two, when they were in California, a couple people started to talk about the sexual abuse that they were facing, some of the things that he was forcing people to do, those types of things, and that's why he took off to Guyana. While he's in Guyana, some word got back from Guyana that they were being held there when they didn't want to be there. That's why politicians and journalists came to check on the loved ones. See, Jim Jones had actually become a pretty powerful figure in San Francisco politics. And like, he met future vice presidents, he met future first ladies. He was very involved. And a lot of the things that were happening, nobody talked about. And that's how he avoided that detection. But he really kind of started to hop around after a while because things started to escalate. Okay, next.
You talked about like family members turning in other family members. What was the consequence for something like, this is kind of shady what we're doing here? Like like would they be punished as in kicked out, or would there be more serious like problems?
Oh, very good. Okay, so what were some of the consequences to being busted by family members? They would have to stand in front of the congregation. They would be ridiculed. They would be forced to labor for an extended period of time. They would be ostracized, not kicked out, but ostracized, separated from their family, all sort of psychological tricks. But they would not kick them out because they didn't want anybody to leave to talk about it. Great question. Mm-hmm.
So he kind of did the cult in like the religious aspect, but could you relate it back to like political dictators like Hitler or Stalin and kind of the same situation?
Very good. If you look at somebody like Adolf Hitler, he was a narcissist, antisocial, that started out his reign with talking about all of these wonderful ideas and these ideals for a group of people that were looking for better because things weren't real good at the time for them. and the traits of some of the dictators like Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin. If you guys have ever heard of Idi Amin, those dictators, they share the same qualities as some of these cult leaders. Yeah. Way in the back.
Would you say that people stay in cults are in cults due to fear and blackmail or to devotion?
Do they stay in cults because of blackmail or because of devotion? I think it's a combination of both. There are still people to this day that, just like followers of Jim Jones to this day believe that what Jim Jones did was good, there are followers of Charles Manson, the famous serial killer, cult leader from California, that still to this day believe that what he did was good. You are going to have those devoted followers that have been absolutely, completely brainwashed.
All right, that's all we have for today. Just remember, we don't care what you think, just as long as you keep on thinking. Thanks for listening.